Did people just vote for an AI candidate in the UK elections? Yeah, it's a story that is bizarre and just keeps getting more bizarre. We have an AI man, a candidate who almost certainly doesn't exist, and we have all the crazy details here on Scroll Deep with me, Benedict Townsend, the show that keeps up with internet nonsense, and I guess political nonsense, so you don't have to. This man ran for the British Parliament, but is he real? Doesn't really look real. The answer, I will tell you, is bizarre. So in case you missed it, the UK general election happened last week, and as predicted, the Labour Party, our mainstream left-wing party, swept to power with a huge landslide after 14 years of Conservative rule. And basically, look, she's a queen, but it's mostly Liz Truss's fault, okay? Britain's most iconic Prime Minister, who came into power, ruined the economy, shook hands with the Queen immediately died, and then she was out of power within 49 days. It was truly the most bizarre run of anyone in history. Anyway, this election also saw the rise of Reform, a brand new far-right party that has decided that the Tories going so far right that they lost the election in record numbers wasn't right enough. And they actually won millions of votes on a platform of like anti-immigration and, you know, all the usual stuff. Interestingly though, even though they won millions of votes, they only won 4 seats in Parliament, because that is how Parliament works. They won a lot of votes, but they weren't like enough to like win seats. But that is quite impressive for a party that has only existed since 2018 and which won nothing in the 2019 election. And a party coming into existence that quickly comes with problems, one of which is finding people to stand in the elections for your party, because you need quite a few. Britain has 650 MPs, members of parliament, and Reform ran 609. And I'll say this, they're not sending their best, okay? Our sister show, cousin show, second cousin show, the newsagents, interviewed one of the candidates for Reform who complained that there were too many people coming into the country via the airport.
I had a moment last year, I was coming through an airport and I was at the arrivals, you know, at the British border, and I was like, wow, you know, there's a lot of people coming in here and we need to re-examine this, you know.
What, the airport?
Yeah.
But a lot of those would be tourists, presumably, or British people coming back from abroad on holiday.
Some of them, yeah. Some of them, absolutely. And some not, so you can tell.
That's one of my favourite things that's ever happened. Not the smartest guy. Anyway, with all these seats to fill, you might wonder where all these people came from, which has led to some mysteries after the election dust settled. Mysteries like, did they run an AI? And does the candidate for Glasgow North actually exist? Okay, so let's start with the AI guy. Meet Mark Matlock, kind of a superhero name, like superhero civilian name. This is him. Take a look at him. He ran for Reform in Clapham and Brixton Hill in South London, and he won 1,758 votes, and he did not show up for the election count, and there are no photos of him campaigning. In fact, the only photo people could find was this one, which definitely looks, at the very least, weird. It does have that kind of AI sheen. It's like weirdly too smooth, and with no evidence that this man exists in the real world, and this photo only to vouch for him, a lot of people said, did Reform run an AI? Now, he has now come out of the shadows and said, quote, "The image is me. Stupidly, I had to get it altered to change my tie and suit as I couldn't get a photographer on time." Basically, his tie wasn't the right color for Reform, so they edited his tie, and in the process, I think smoothed him the hell out, because what is wrong with the texture of his face? And he actually showed The Guardian a copy of the original image, which, by the way, I think is from when he was like a student, because he looks way younger in the image. So he's not an AI. It's just a guy who did not campaign at all. So kind of sad he didn't become the MP, because he clearly really wants it. But an even stranger story seems to be unfolding in Scotland, where Glasgow North candidate Helen Burns cannot be located. Comedian and TikToker Kim Blythe has been sleuthing around trying to find Helen and just couldn't find her. Went to the address that's listed as her office, couldn't find her anywhere in Glasgow. Even on Reform's actual website, there's very little info about her, doesn't even have a photo. She also doesn't appear to have turned up for the count. Does Helen exist? And that's not all. There's also Morag McCrae, another Glasgow candidate, Glasgow Southwest candidate, who does not have a photo on the Reform website and also seems to be missing in action. I guess Reform were like, we're probably not going to win in Glasgow. Let's just vaguely enter. There is such a thing as paper candidates, which is where you enter someone as a candidate, someone who is real, but they just don't really campaign. They're kind of just there for the sake of it. So that's not new. What is new is entering a candidate where they don't even have a photo, no one knows if they're alive or if they're real. So at the time of recording, we have one AI guy who turned out to be real and 2 Scottish candidates who cannot be located. So a bit of a strange roundup for Reform there. It's not looking great for the future. I think for the next election, they should at least try running people. Although they have tried that, and he apparently thought that the airport was letting people in, so maybe they're better without people. But of course, there is an American election on the horizon in November. Will we be seeing a similar thing there? I would say probably not. I feel like, you know, to give the Americans some credit, there is a little bit more of an expectation that you get out there and press the flesh, as they say, that you talk to voters. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in American, you know, hyper-specific local elections, maybe they do just run random people who never turn up. And I do think the AI thing, even though it turned out not to be real, I do think that is a little bit of a harbinger of something we might be seeing more. Certainly a lot of the copy on reform websites has that kind of ChatGPT flavor. I don't think a human wrote this. Also, there's a line in one of their manifestos where it's like, we will hand jobs from humans to AIs in a responsible manner, which is slightly scary. And also, I like to imagine that they didn't add that to the prompt, that ChatGPT just put that in itself. Just like, let's sneak that in there, make that law. An age-old tradition in the UK is novelty candidates running, especially in the seats where party leaders are. So for example, Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, now the Prime Minister, he was running against a guy in an Elmo costume who actually turned and shook his hand afterwards. And I have to say, Keir Starmer seemed delighted to shake hands with Elmo. That's a real leader right there. A YouTuber named Nico was running against Rishi Sunak, the former Prime Minister. He actually held up a little piece of paper with an L on it behind Rishi while Rishi was giving his resignation speech, which is like, I'm sure every 12-year-old in the country was like, that is so Skibbity Ohio, I can't believe he did that, that's based. There's also Count Binface, which is a perennial novelty candidate here in the UK who always runs. His costume these days is actually quite advanced, like over the years. It's kind of like, you know, the difference between a Marvel character on a TV show versus in the movies. Do you know what I mean? He's like a bit more slick now. It's like a proper suit. It's kind of like a suit of armor. But what do you think? Would you vote for an AI candidate? Do you think Helen Burns is real? Are you Helen Burns? Let us know. Is your dad, Mr. Burns, willing to talk to us? That would be excellent. What do you think? Let us know in the comments down below. And as always, if you've made it this far into the video, it's time for the secret question, which this time is, what is your favorite kind of arts and crafts tool? Is it like a masking tape? Do you enjoy a ballpoint pen, a fountain pen? You know, when you're going into a stationery shop or an art shop, what are you beelining to? Perhaps the colourful cardboard? Let me know in 500 words or more down in the comments. And of course, the people who don't understand why you're commenting that because they didn't make it far enough in the video, because they're cowards and they're not real. They're a bunch of Helen Burns. Until next time, I'm Helen Burns, as far as you know, and this has been Scroll Deep.